First of all, I want to say thank you for inviting me to be back here again. I was here last year, as was Assemblywoman Buchanan, and it is a privilege and an honor to be here with all of you. And it's great to see a packed room. I figured by now you guys would be tired of hearing, at least from me, but seeing a packed room is kind of exciting. The other thing I want to say, I was hoping Joan would be outside of the room when I said this, but since she's here, I'm going to have to say it with her here. I've been in government for a lot of years, and in and around the legislative process, first on the budget side, and then eventually when I got into technology. It's very refreshing to have a technology champion within the legislature. There's a lot of folks within the legislature that know about technology, and they talk about it all the time, but usually in a negative light. Joan is really refreshing in that she not only understands the value of technology, she knows firsthand what opportunities it offers for the state. So it's wonderful to have you there, Joan. I'm glad to hear about your new committee assignments, but I'm really hopeful that doesn't mean that we lose you on the budget committee that oversees our stuff. Anyway, so here's what I thought we would talk about today, or maybe not. There we go. What I had for you is a little bit of an update on the stuff that we've been working on over the last year here at the Technology Agency, and it's been a busy year for us, I have to tell you. So I wanted to give you a little bit of an update about the stuff that I talked about last year, a little bit of an update on where we are in big technology projects for the state, and not all of them, but some select ones, a bit of an update on what's going on with us in the reorganization, and Joan touched on that, and then tell you more importantly about some of the upcoming and exciting initiatives that we hope to be able to talk to you about with some level of success a year from now, if we get invited back. I do want to end by talking about a couple of concerns of things that I've observed over my year being here as a state CIO. And then also, I guess we'll do this at the panel part of it, but I want to make sure that I address any topics that are of interest to you that I may have left out. Before I start, I did want to take a moment to introduce and share with you some of the members of the Technology Agency leadership team. They're mostly sitting over here, although I know that Undersecretary Anna Brandon just stepped out of the room, but she must have known this was coming. So let me start with Undersecretary Paul Benedetto. I'll talk to you about his, stand up, Paul. I am. Oh. In a moment, I'll talk to you about his responsibilities. Associate Secretary Veronica Ortiz-Torres, who heads up our digital education efforts. Assistant Secretary Adelina Sendejas, who's heading up our digital literacy and broadband availability efforts. And Carrie Gutierrez, who heads up our Office of Professional Development. And the ultimate professional that she is, Anna stepped back into the room just in time. So here's our Undersecretary, Anna Brandon. So last year I talked to you about our interest in trying to organize our agency a little bit more effectively and more efficiently for the responsibilities that we had. I talked to you about how there really are two sides to our agency. One side of it is a technology services provider, and the other side is the control agency with oversight responsibilities and strategy responsibilities for the rest of the state. So I'm pleased to report that we've been able to achieve that over the last year. We've effectively organized ourselves in that way. These are the different areas. So under the service provider side, you see we have our data center services, our public safety communications office, GIS, e-services and mobility. The ones in the green boxes there, those are new offices that we've established over the last year, and we're going to highlight some of the work we're doing in those areas. Our Office of Professional Development, we established that. I'll talk about that in a little bit. Office for broadband availability and digital literacy and digital education, and then our Architecture and Standards Office. Over on the control agency side, as you can see, we have most of the offices are still the same. We've kind of shuffled the work a little bit. But one area that we did establish over the last year is our Office for Telecom Procurements. And I'll mention that down the road a little bit. That's why it was important for me to introduce you to some of the new members of the agency, because they head up these different offices. So let me start by talking about our Office of Professional Development. This is an office that I'm truly excited about. One of the things that became very obvious to me, I'd been away from government for a couple of years before I came back into this role, but one of the things that became very obvious to me is, one, that technology really is here to stay in government. If you were to shut down our computers today, half of government, actually most of government, would be out of commission. So if technology is part and parcel of the way we do business, then we better be good about managing and supporting our technology. And as I looked around, what I saw as I looked at the IT workforce in the state is that there were skill gaps here and there. There was a lot of efforts in training and education for folks at the leadership level, some efforts in training for folks at the technical level, but all the folks in between, you know, it was kind of hit and miss in terms of whether or not they were getting the education and the skills and the training that they needed to be effective in their jobs. Now, thanks to you as partners to the state, many of you try to fill those gaps by putting on education sessions or seminars. The challenge it was that I think for you folks, you put out a lot of money, a lot of effort, and then sometimes the payoff wasn't that great. One, you know, you didn't necessarily get the right people in the room or get the numbers that you needed there. For us, it was also a little bit of a wasted opportunity because you folks are investing a lot into California to make sure our workers are skilled and knowledgeable. But again, you know, it was sort of hit and miss. So part of the idea with this agency or with this office is to have somebody in charge of identifying where are the skill gaps in the state IT workforce, identify where our training needs, and then go out and find the opportunities, find them cheaply, but go out and find opportunities to provide training and development for those folks. So some of the things that we're doing within this office, for example, is putting on topic-specific forums where we'll gather the state workforce and you guys bring us your experts and we say, you know, we're going to have a forum specifically on mobile computing or specifically on IT security or to talk about cloud computing or the use of social media or legacy modernization or you name the topic, we'll gather the workforce. You bring the experts. Together we'll work out an agenda so that the curriculum is on point and it gives us an opportunity to learn from the experts, have our communities come together and learn from each other, and then also provide some opportunities for folks to network. Other things that we're doing is to try and bring together the state workforce itself, establishing communities of interest so that we leverage the experience that already exists within the state. There are some folks within government that really know how to run projects or that really know how to do security or that really know about developing applications or running old, you know, legacy systems. The problem is that they're spread all throughout the state and they don't come together that often. So with the big brain drain that's happening in government, you know, folks hitting retirement age, you know, maybe the luster of being a public employee wearing out a little bit. A lot of folks are looking to move into other areas that are more economically advantageous for them. We're losing a lot of talented folks. So the idea is bring the communities together and help them to learn from each other, to share lessons learned and best practices. And then finally, through this office, to establish and run and, again, coordinate the different mentorship and internship programs that we have throughout the state. As I mentioned, that office is headed up by Carrie Gutierrez. The other thing I guess I would say about it, too, is that on our website, I understand it went live today. I didn't actually get a chance to see it this morning. We now have a calendar of all of the upcoming events and forums that we're going to be either co-sponsoring or participating in. So for those of you that are interested or have a particular area of expertise that want to get involved with these, Carrie will be the person to see, and you can go on there and see what events we have lined up over the next year. Another area that we've really put a big emphasis on is in the area of GIS and e-services. You know, I was talking to the folks at my table before, and I said, what topics do folks, you know, want to hear about? I want to make sure that I got a chance to cover it. And Jerry was kind enough to say, well, you know, we'd kind of be interested in knowing what's the state doing to prepare itself for the November election, especially I'm assuming that if the governor's tax initiative doesn't pass, what is government going to do? So we've been thinking about that quite a bit and for a while. You know, what happens if we have to continue to tighten our belt from a budgetary perspective? And so one of the things that's become very obvious is that to the extent that we're able to offer more services to government's consumers, where they can do self-service, they can do online services, or they can leverage technology to better access government information or services, the better it's going to be for government, that we're able to operate more effectively and more efficiently. So one of the things that we're looking at doing is leveraging data that the government already has, and specifically GIS information. We went out and did a survey of the different state agencies and said, how many agencies have some amount of GIS data, maps for the state, data that's categorized in different areas. How many of you want to guess how many different sets of GIS data we have out there? How many of you would say over 100? Over 1,000? How does 3,700 different data sets sound? There's a lot out there. A lot of agencies are using it. The problem is nobody knows about it. Nobody knows how to access it, and all of this is public data. So one of the things that we thought is, let's put together a portal. We'll put together a geo portal where government can come in, state or local, maybe the private sector come in and find innovative ways of using that data. Maybe we can spur some app development that folks can use to drive our economy and drive economic stimulus, or folks can simply use to make better policy decisions. So part of our effort just went live. Actually, the geo portal is in beta test right now. I've seen it already. It looks pretty cool. We're trying to make it pretty, trying to fix a couple of things, and then make it very user-friendly. But our plan is to have that live by January of 2013. Along the way, we have already launched a geocoding service that will enable agencies and departments to unlock information that's already contained in state-owned data sets or spreadsheets. And then finally, to add high-value web services. So as an example, I just threw out one, but our idea is to find more and more ways to leverage the data that we already own, but offering a parcel data web service so that folks can go in and identify property using this geo portal. I guess I need longer arms. I think that's what I'm discovering here. Here's another area that we put a big focus on is the area of mobile computing. You heard Jason earlier speak about how folks are moving into using mobile technologies more and more. For us, that's a trend that we watch carefully. We look at the number of calls that come into our 911 systems, and we've noticed over the years a growing trend of calls coming in from mobile devices, or people accessing the state's different websites via mobile devices. So for us, it's a new service platform, and it's also an opportunity to reach maybe constituents that we didn't always reach as government before. And again, an opportunity to offer self-service to folks. Higher user satisfaction, hopefully more effective operations of government. So we featured this area and this topic prominently in our strategic plan. And then to facilitate departments moving into a mobile space, we launched and made for free a California mobile app template. What I like about the template is that it's pretty much device agnostic. You can access it over an Android phone, you can access it over an iPhone, you can access it over a BlackBerry or any other sort of text device. It'll work in any of those areas. We make it available for free. We give it away not only to state agencies, but other public sector agencies. So we've had other states come in and actually ask for it and leverage it. Then we put our resources online. So we have training videos, we have the template available online, it's available for free. We also make it available to the private sector so that if you develop innovative apps and you want to bring them to us, you at least have the template that the state is already using and that consumers can use to have a very consistent user experience. And then finally, this is something that I'm really proud of too. We launched our own mobile app store. We call it the California Mobile App Gallery. That's a website. You can go online and find it. And I think right now we're up to about 55 different apps that are on there, representing over 37 different departments and agencies. And again, our push is to get agencies to do more and more online to make it easier to serve consumers. See? Longer arms. They really work. Let me give you an update on what we're doing with some of our state projects. These are things that have launched or kicked into gear over the last year. And the reason I wanted to highlight these is because very often what we hear is, things never go right in government. We really don't know how to do technology. The only time you ever hear about it is when we screw up. Now, this isn't to say we don't screw up. We do, every now and then. But we also do a lot of things right here. So I just wanted to highlight just a couple, and this isn't a comprehensive list at all, but a couple of the things that we've done over the last couple of years. Actually, about the last 18 months, really. So you heard earlier the Enterprise Data to Revenue project that was launched by Franchise Tax Board. It was launched in August of 2011. Already it's collected $65 million in revenues without changing a tax law, without having to go out and do increased audits or anything like that. It's brought in additional $65 million in revenue, and it's collecting at a much higher rate than anticipated, 173% of projections to date. A couple of the other ones that I want to highlight, I'm not going to read through the whole list, but CalPads. The reason I wanted to put CalPads on there is because when I came in to my interview with the governor, that was the first thing he asked me about. Do we have to do this thing, and is it ever going to work? I'm pleased to report to the governor we did it, and it's working. And in fact, at the end of this school year, the different local education agencies used it for the end-of-year data collection and reporting, and they were very happy with it. We have a couple of modules that are still on deck for later this month, but for the most part, the thing is done. The other one I wanted to highlight here is the Napa State Hospital Personal Duress Alarm System. Basically, it's an alarm system that you wear around your neck. Many of you heard the story a while back of a staff member at one of the state hospitals that was killed by one of the wards. Well, this thing launched. It's an effort to try and keep staff members safer. And literally, it just launched in August. Within a couple of weeks of it launching, one of the staff members actually had to use it, and it worked perfectly. They were attacked by an inmate. They pulled their alarm. People were notified. They were able to respond and kept the person safe from being damaged. So again, just a couple of other areas here. Cal here, as many of you know, the Health Benefit Exchange effort has kicked off. Fiscal, which many people thought would never get to this point, finally did kick off earlier this year. Again, this is not to say that we're all the way there. This is just, in some cases, where we've actually gone into production or gone live in some of these things. MyCalPays, the 21st Century Project, it's had a long and troubled history, but it is now live. CMEP's another one, 18-year project, I think, or something like that. All I know is it started before I came into government service. But it is now live in 2 counties with another county coming up, and then we'll be scheduled to roll out. So these are some of the things that we've been working on over the last year. Let me talk about what's coming up, what you can anticipate in the future from us. What I hope to be here next year talking to you about from a position of saying we've done this already. Assemblywoman Buchanan mentioned the reorganization plan. The only thing that I would add to what she said is that it does become operational July 13th of 2013. It's already in effect by law. We have a year to put it into production and to put it into effect. The thing that I would say about the technology is, for the most part, we remain intact. We don't lose any responsibilities. We don't lose any statutory authority. And in fact, the only real difference to us is that we get an extended authority to use Section 6611 to do our telecom procurements. So, thank you, Joan, for that. It does greatly facilitate our efforts to do telecom procurements. Another area that we're looking forward to getting into in the very near future is cloud computing. He's not here, but Ron Hughes was appointed Director of the Office of Technology Services, and he's really leading the effort to move OTech into the 21st century. So on the topic of what are we doing to prepare in case government has to do further budget cutting? Well, one of the things that we're looking at is how do we make our technology services better, faster, and more economic. One of the ways of doing that is to move into the area of cloud computing. Now, I think government is going to have to be careful about how we go about doing this, and we're going to have to do it in phases. Our approach is going to be to first offer a private cloud service offering through OTech. What we'll do is we'll go out, we'll ask you folks to help us put in place a private cloud over at OTech, where we can run our mission-critical systems, where we have our systems that have sensitive data in there, and that also allows us to provide, on an automatic basis, disaster recovery and failover recovery to our mission-critical systems. Our hope is to have that up and running within the next 6 to 12 months. OTech is working on an RFI and an RFP right now, so keep an eye out for that, and we do want you to participate in that. Once we get past that, then we're going to start looking at how do we move California into the public cloud. Again, we'll have to do this very carefully. We'll have to be careful with what sort of data we have out there, what sort of agreements we put in place with the cloud providers out there about, things such as reporting if something goes wrong, having access to understand their security protocols and procedures. But our intent really is to move into the cloud. So the question that begs is California going to do what the feds have done and adopt a cloud-first policy? The answer to that, I think, is maybe. We'll have to see how we do on this. I think if we're able to successfully launch a cloud offering, especially one that's secure, that's reliable, and move into the cloud, I think we could very easily see, or very realistically see, a cloud-first policy. But I think we have to get the plumbing done and the infrastructure done first. Something else that's coming up, I know a lot of folks are quite interested in CalNet 3. We're in the process now. What I will tell you is that we are on schedule with it. The approach to this, again, is also going to be phased. What we're going to do, unlike CalNet 2, was to establish a list of qualified bidders. Basically run the procurement, see who's qualified, which vendors can participate in CalNet 3. Once we have that list, you don't have to requalify every time that we go out to try and procure new services. You're able to qualify and participate in all of the different solicitations that we'll have for services. There'll be a series of different solicitations, and our intent is to have all the services that we have in CalNet 2 completely replaced by January of 2014. I know Jason was talking about how budgets look for not only the state but other public entities in the coming years. So each year we ask our state agencies to put forward a IT capital plan, which basically says, here's what we want to do in the next 5 years in the way of technology. These are the initiatives that we see, the systems that we want to replace, et cetera, et cetera. Our agency takes those proposals, they put them forward in a concept stage, we review them, we line them up against our state strategic plan, we look at the capacity of the department, what their track record is, and decide which ones we think can go forward and which ones we think maybe they need to rethink and hold off on. This is what it looks like. This is a 2011 one. Our next one is due in the next few months. But this is our 2011 ones. These are just the concepts that we approved. Right? So that means agencies now have the authority or the ability to go forward and develop these into full-scale initiatives and proposals. But $807 million worth of technology need and technology system needs, and these are only the reportable ones. There's a lot of them that are not reportable that departments have delegated authority for. So we see close to $1 billion in new technology initiatives. This doesn't include the ones that are already in flight, like FisCal or CalHears or MyCalPays or any of those, just new stuff. In terms of what's in there, what we've seen is a lot of legacy modernization, a lot of initiatives that are focused on transparency and accountability of government, reporting systems, for example, a lot of online and self-service sorts of initiatives, a lot of efforts that are aimed at making the administrative side of government more effective and more efficient. So scheduling systems, billing systems, reporting systems, those sorts of things. A lot of the initiatives are really aimed at enhancing and making program operations more efficient. So we see a lot of licensing systems, for example, or case management systems, those sorts of efforts. And then finally, systems that are trying to find ways of leveraging data that the state already collects. So our goal is to identify what's there. If there's opportunities for departments to work together, we encourage them to do that. In some cases, we require them to do that so that the state gets a good bang for its buck, and that we understand that as we move forward, government systems have to be able to be interoperable with each other and to collect and share information across the board. A couple of things that I wanted to talk about in the area of IT procurement. As I mentioned, our agency took over procurement of the telecom procurements. I think it was in about the end of last calendar year. So the transition has completed. At this point, we're assisting departments in conducting their own telecom procurements as well as conducting the CalNet procurement. And we're in the process of going through and saying, okay, how do we make this process more effective and more efficient? We've heard a lot of the complaints and a lot of the issues that folks have with how long it takes us to do procurements, and then also how sometimes the rules are set in a way that really don't foster and promote competition. So we're taking this as an opportunity to look at not only moving the responsibility, but also how do we make the processes more effective. Assemblywoman Buchanan mentioned AB 1498 and the report and the plan that requires. I am pleased to announce that effort has kicked off, spearheaded through the governor's office, but with the involvement of general services, with our agency. We're going to be reaching out to other departments within the state to help us, craft this plan. And at some point, we're going to come out to all of you and ask you for your input and your advice. So my advice to you would be start cataloging and start writing that stuff up now. If you want to send in information or your thoughts on, what could be improved in the way of telecom procurements, not telecom, but just IT procurements, and solutions and issues as you see them. I would say start drafting those up for yourselves, because we are going to seek input from the vendor community. And if you have information or ideas and thoughts, by all means send them in. I would say probably send them in to Jim Butler at DGS or to Fred Klass or myself. And then finally, I want to end on a couple of observations and maybe even a little bit of admonishments here. Some of them for you, a lot of them are actually for the state people, which there's not a lot of them in the room, but believe me, they're going to hear about this too. They already have been. Over the last year, myself and the folks over in Anna's side of the house have been doing a lot of looking at what's going on in technology. Why do some projects work? Why do some initiatives work? Why do some operations work? And why do some of them not work? Or, why do we have trouble with some of them? And I've started to identify a couple of different areas that I see coming up every now and then. I'm hopeful that they don't become a trend, and I'm fearful that they might. And so what I wanted to do is just share those with you so that you can be on the lookout for them, because we already are. And we're trying to, where we can, get involved and try to prevent things from going off the rails. So first and foremost, I would say one of the trends that I've seen is that I think what happens is companies, in an effort to be competitive and to meet our own sometimes difficult requirements of our procurements, really undercut themselves in terms of what they price their services to us for. Now, I'm all for getting a good deal. I don't take this to say jack up your prices on us. But what I have noticed is that if sometimes when the prices are too low, they're too good to be believed, we run into problems. So part of that is on us, because the way we set up our requirements or maybe our evaluation criteria leads to the low-cost bids being the most successful. So part of it is also on us for not having really good requirements spelled out so that you know what you're bidding for. But what I have seen is that when folks at the state level and in the vendor community try and get too cheap, things go wrong. So what I would encourage you to do is really do a good job of pricing your bids, because we're going to hold you accountable to them. That's one of the things that we're really focusing on making departments do. Leads into the other area of contract management. What we've seen all too often is departments will go out, they'll spend years running a procurement, nailing down a contract, and then nobody ever manages to the contract. And what ends up happening is departments end up getting in trouble, projects get in trouble, and I think you as vendors have a very difficult time. So what we're pushing departments to do is to stick to a contract. If you have a contract, stick to it and manage by it. I would say it's important for you guys to do the same. In some cases, you're going to have to hold the state accountable and say, hey, I know what you need. I know you're trying to get us to do this. We'd love to help, but we got to make sure that the contract reflects what you're actually asking us to do. I've seen departments get themselves in trouble. I've seen vendors get themselves in trouble by trying to solve a problem but not really sticking to a contract. The other thing that's an issue too, and I see this cropping up here and there, sometimes maybe it's just because the monetary pressures require folks to bring in team members that maybe don't have the skill set or experience on the vendor side. The issue of quality of deliverables has become a not infrequent issue that's coming up. We're watching that. My oversight folks are watching that. We're holding departments accountable to that. and I think that's going to trickle down to the vendors as well. What I would encourage you to do is make sure that you guys have built in your own quality control efforts around your deliverables. And then finally, I didn't know what to call this one with the little peanuts characters. A lot of this is our own fault because of how long it takes us to run our procurements. But very often what will happen is, we'll get a bid and we'll look at the qualifications of the staff that are bid and say, wow, this is a great team. Problem is, by the time the folks get on the ground, it's a completely different team. Now, like I said, a lot of that is our problem because it takes us so long. You can't just have people sitting on the bench. But on a couple of occasions, I have seen folks bid folks that they had no intention of actually having show up on day one. So what I would say is be careful of that. We'll do our part. We'll try and work on making our procurements a little bit more timely so that you guys can be competitive and you can actually bring the folks that you bid. But, obviously we understand that a lot of times folks either move on or go on to different companies or whatever. But if you do replace them with like quality folks. Okay. That was the end of it. I was going to talk about topics that might be of interest to you, but I think we're going to do that during the panel. So I want to thank you. Hope to be here next year with a lot of good news on some of the initiatives that we're working on. And if I missed anything in my presentation, please just bring it up at the panel. All right. Thank you.